ربنا
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على الأشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين أما بعد. Awaited Savior, my respected elders and dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And thank you so much for joining me in this next episode of Quranic Personalities, where we were discussing the life of Lady Maryam. And in the last episode, we sort of reflected on certain points as a parent. What role and what involvement should you as a parent, or should we as parents have? What level of involvement should we have in the life of our children? And obviously, because I did not go into too much depth, because our focus is on Baby Maryam and our time is short. But however, there were two unanswered questions. One was, how did Prophet Zakaria become responsible for the care of Lady Maryam, which we discussed in the previous video. But the second one was, why did Allah grant Maryam such spiritual loftiness? And the reason being, basically what I want to say is that how did Maryam become such a pious and close servant of Allah? And to start this video off, we discussed of the role of a parent, and I sort of want to link the two. And I'm going to link the two by discussing one particular narration from Risalatul Hukuk by Imam Sajjad, where he talks about the right of the child, the Haqqul Walad. Now obviously, because time is short, I'm going to go directly into the English, and you can read the Arabic, you can pause the video. The right of your child is that you should know that he is from you and will be ascribed to you through both his good and his evil, i.e., you are accountable for whatever he does. In the immediate affairs of this world, you are responsible for what has been entrusted to you, such as educating him in good conduct, i.e., you have to teach him the ahkam and the akhlaq, the adab of Islam, the rules, the manners and the ethics of Islam, pointing him in the direction of his Lord, i.e., you need to teach him about religion, you need to teach him about God, the Prophet, the Imams, etc., and helping him to obey him. So act towards him with the action of one who knows that he will be rewarded for good doing towards him and punished for evil doing, i.e., if you teach your children properly, then as long as you have done your responsibility, irrespective of whatever they do, you will be rewarded for their good deeds. And if you don't do your job properly, on the day of judgment, you will be responsible and you will be punished for whatever they do. So Imam Sajjad highlights that this is the protocol basically. This is the blueprint. If you follow this, automatically your children will be able to achieve this spiritual loftiness. However, they need to understand the path to God. So let's see what Baby Maryam does. So how did Maryam achieve such spiritual loftiness? So number one, the parent has a responsibility to give them knowledge, and once a child achieves this knowledge, let's see what, now that Maryam is under the care of Prophet Zakaria, let's see what happens. So now, in this part of the story, when we conclude, this part is Lady Maryam before the birth of Prophet Jesus. And so in this story, we shall be focusing on Lady Maryam, her personality, her faith and devotion. Now, in order to understand this part of the story, I feel it was scattered in different verses again. So I've got two verses from Surah Al Imran. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wa iskalatil malaikatu ya Maryamu inna Allaha istafaki wa tahharaki wa istafaki ala nisa'il alamin. Al Imran verse 43. Ya Maryam uqnuti li rabbik wasjudi warka'i ma'ar raki'in. Then from Al Imran we need to go to Surah Tahrim verse 12. Wa Maryamnata Imran allati ahsanat farajaha fa nafakhna fihi min ruhina wa saddaqat bi kalimati rabbiha wa kutubihi wa kanat minal qanitin. Then we have verse 16 of Surah Maryam. So once again, Surah Maryam, right, even though it's named after her, it discusses other personalities too. But for the sake of this discussion, I've picked out two verses. So Surah Maryam verse 16, Waskur fil kitabi Maryama izin tabazat min ahliha makanan sharkiya. Verse number 17. فَاتَّخَذَتْ مِن دُونِهِمْ حِجَابًا فَأَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْهَا رُوحَنَا فَتَمَثَّلَ بَشَرًا سَوِيًّا. Right. Now, as we can see that these verses have been scattered across a few chapters, right? And what I've understood after looking at the narrations is that sort of these verses are talking about Lady Maryam's, her day-to-day life. Now what's happened is that Lady Maryam is now somebody who is serving in the Baytul Muqaddas. She doesn't get the menstrual cycle, so she does not have to leave this holy place of worship. And at the same time, she is worshipping God in her own free time, and when people come to worship God there, she is sort of serving them in some way. The narrations don't give us in what way she was serving them, but they do mention that her job was to do that. However, through this serving the people, and at the same time, in her own personal worship, spending time with Allah, we see that the angels are now conversing with her. You can see that the Quran is very clear. It says that the angels tell her, "O Maryam, Allah has chosen you upon the women of the world." At the same time, the angels are now giving us some instructions. They're telling her, "Uqnuti," right? Uqnuti comes from the word Qunut. Then sort of Uqnuti, Qunut, and obviously we will discuss this term in a bit. Prostrate to God and bow with those who bow. At the same time, it talks about other aspects of Lady Maryam. Okay, so now what the Mufassirin have said is that in terms of Qunut, when it said Uqnuti, right, the angels are telling, or rather the Mufassirin say that here, this word Qunut, which is used in the form of a verb, is actually telling us that it means to be humble and be in a constant state of worship in front of God. So this is something above. So it's telling, because if you look at the verse, right, usually when we are the word Qunut, we understand it to be as a part of our namaz, our daily prayers. But here, the word Qunut is being used differently. It is being used separately outside of prayer. And so the Mufassirin have said that this is another meaning. And Qunut means to be humble and to be constantly in a state of worship. Number one. Number two, usjudi. Now what the Mufassirin have said is that usjudi has a deeper meaning. And it says that what they have told us is that it's a higher form of humility. Then the verses say that the angels are telling Prophet Maryam to bow with those who bow. So the Mufassirin have said that this warka'i can have two meanings. One is that when those sincere servants came to the place of worship to worship, it was telling her that you also join the prayer, join the congregational prayer with them, the Salatul Jama'ah. Or they said that this verse, this warka'i can have another meaning, and that is to be in the company of the sincere servants of Allah. So once again, you have this idea of the environment in which you live in, that also has a certain effect. At the same time, the other part that we sort of need to look into is that verse number 12 of Surah Tahrim says, وَمَرْيَمَ ابْنَةَ إِمْرَانَ الَّتِي أَحْسَنَتْ فَرْجَهَا. Right? It says Maryam, the daughter of Imran, who guarded her chastity. Now, the word farj, right? In the dictionary, it refers to a certain part of the body of a woman. But what the Mufassirin have said is that Allah actually does not mean that she was simply a woman who was protecting her private parts. She was simply a woman who wasn't indulging in adultery. No. What they say that is this particular term means is that Lady Maryam, her chastity was so high that apart from avoiding this act of adultery, which is a big sin in Islam, she was somebody who avoided free mixing, and she did not have any interaction with somebody who was not a mahram. And the proof of this is in verse 20 of Surah Maryam. So if you look up the Quran, when the angel comes to her and he tells her that Allah is going to give you, He's going to give you Prophet Isa, she says that how is this possible? No man has ever touched me. So from these two verses and this particular verse that we are discussing from Surah Tahrim, the Mufassirin say that she never free mixed and she never had any sort of interaction with a man who was not a mahram. Now obviously, Prophet Zakaria was her uncle. So if she was learning from him, she was learning any Islamic principles, anything of the religion, that does not come under this verse, right? So inshallah, in order to sort of finish this discussion, I'm going to end the video here, and inshallah join me in the next part where we can sort of conclude the story and understand certain deeper aspects of the life of Lady Maryam. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.